Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. I wanted to throw together some clusters today so that they could be used as in journal pages is what I'm most likely to use them as. They could be used as card toppers, but as you know, I hardly ever make cards. Or just layers on a tag, anything like that. And because I've got these pieces of paper left over from tag making the other day with the Tim Holtz 12 by 12 Wallflower papers, I've got lots of paper dolls hanging around that might want to go on, photos, Photobooth, Snapshots, and yeah, book pages I think are probably going to be in the mix. I've got various stickers and ephemera that might go in, the occasional little metal bits and bobs, but also these fabulous curator label stamps that I've been using, and I have put those all onto Mattints backgrounds. That's what I was busy doing with that. And then I also wanted to put in some ephemera from my own stamp sets, that each one has got something on it. So I thought I will clear the decks here, having shown you the kind of thing we're playing with today, so that you know what's on the table. And I'm going to create another sheet of these with my ephemera so that you can see how I got myself all these lovely blues and greens and turquoises, which are my favourites of the ready-made curator labels. I'm always left with all the red and orange and pink ones, as you can probably imagine, and I run out of the blues and the greens and the turquoises faster than anything else. So it's a joy to me to be able to create the colours I want to use more often than anything else, labels wise. So I will get the craft mat out, get a couple of Mattints out so that I can create these delicious little handmade stamped labels, and I'll be back with you in a sec. I've pulled out ephemera from lots of my stamp sets. It's going to take a while to sort them back in, so while they're out, I'm going to make the most of it. These are some of the Mattints I was using for this. It's mixtures of the Mojito, the Dragonfly, I think there might have been some fern in one of them, shark, river deep, I don't know. The joy of the Mattints, as you'll know if you've seen me using them in other videos, is that they are matte tints, so they're a tinted glaze, but they have a completely matte finish, which makes them gorgeous for stamping over. And you can layer up the colours. If you haven't seen that happening in a slightly bolder way than it's going to happen today. Today is going to be a little more delicate, a little more Alison. But I'll link in the description to the video that I've used them in. Or there are a couple actually, because there's a whole swatching one with the early colours, but Mojito is a new neon. So this is the product that has driven me into whole new colorscapes that you would never imagine would be Alison colorscapes. And it's partly because, as you can see, they start out very, very subtle. They look insanely full on in the bottle, but then you start using them and they're very, very subtle to start with, and you can layer up for depth of colour. So I'm going to start with a nice thin layer, and you can see already I've got colour variation for when I stamp those labels. They're going to be not all completely homogeneous. They're going to have a variety of colours and tints. That's the shark going down, so that's almost a sort of grey, but there is a bit of Mojito also happening in there. Going to put on a layer of the Dragonfly, so that's going to get me lovely turquoisey labels. And then if I go with another layer of Dragonfly, I'll get a stronger turquoise. So where I go over just the once, you'll see that'll stay pale, but as I build up the colour, I get a lovely depth starting to happen in my turquoise. So that's going to give me a stronger version. And then I think what I'm going to do is put a little bit more Mojito over that, so that I can get that sort of duck egg thing going on. And I might go so bold as to have some River Deep also standing by. That's a slightly deeper blue as opposed to the grey blue of the shark. A little bit of that, and I'm going to layer that over one bit. So that's giving me a beautiful blue. And then I'm going to get some Mojito into the mix. That's giving me some greens and some turquoises across there. And then on, so that's got a couple more layers than the first piece. Still subtle, still very subtle. I'm going to go completely Mojito to start with across most of this piece. These are just some offcuts of card I had hanging around. Couldn't possibly tell you where they came from or when I had them. I'm going to put in a bit of fern, which is a lovely grey green. So that's going to give me another variation in what's coming onto the card and what I'll have in my stamps, in my little labels eventually. And then I think, I don't know, let's try a bit of shark over all of that, just to grey it up a little bit, bluey grey it up a little bit, or grey it down, should that be. Oh, see, that's nice. And as you layer these up, you start to get a sort of glow that comes from the layered colours. That's a really nice colour. But in places I want a bit of variation, so I'm coming back in with the Dragonfly. I'm going to take that down one side of this so that I've got, again, those lovely turquoises coming through. And you'll see when I stamp this, it may look as though I've got strange transitions of colour, but you really, even if you stamp across one of those transitions so that the label's got a bit of each colour, it really doesn't matter. It looks as though the label has worn away or faded in the light, so that bits of it have got paler and other bits are stronger. So that's all very nice. And I might, on this very pale one, I think I'm going to put just another little layer of something, just build up the colour there. Excuse me, don't know what's going on there. Hope that's not the start of hay fever already. Can't possibly be. Way too early. Oh, see, I do enjoy that blue going over. It just gives you something smoky that is quite nice. Grand. So that's those. Might, well, no, there's really not a lot of Mattint left on the mat. I could have mopped it up to somewhere. So I'm going to let those dry, or I might dry them with the heat tool because I'm feeling impatient. And come back and do a bit of stamping onto them. So as you can see, I've been merrily stamping onto my Mattint tinted papers. You can, of course, use paint or inks to create your painted papers. There's no problem with that at all. If that's what you've got in your stash, use that, of course, use that. I'm just really interested at the moment in exploring with these beautiful translucent Mattints. Paints will give you a matte finish, which is also going to be great for stamping on, but they're also, they don't have this translucent glow. Inks, for the most part, if you're working with distress inks, they're going to be water soluble, so the joy of the Mattints is that they are completely permanent. So yeah, use what you've got, obviously, but this is what I happen to be excited in playing with at the moment. And I'm stamping in watering can archival because I find that the grey gives me just the right sort of faded vintage print look. I was also really delighted as I was pulling out the stamps. So this is not by any means all my ephemera stamps, but they're drawn from, well, certainly about 10 different sets, 8 or 10 different sets maybe these come from. And I'm always on the lookout for a good circular element because I like to have that. And I was really delighted to find over the years how many really good circular elements I've managed to dig up from my personal family ephemera and memorabilia, and yes, in various places and ways and possibilities. But yeah, I really like all these circular bits and bobs that just give me. So some of these I'm stamping multiples at a time, and then I'm just kind of filling in the gaps with ones that catch my eye and seem like they're going to fit. So I'm almost there. I will do some cutting out of these. I have got some circle punches which I'm hoping are going to fit at least a couple of these stamps. Been on the lookout for... That's not quite going to fit there. Let's not risk it. Let's pop that over here. But of course the trouble with circle punches is that they are specific sizes and they may not be the right sizes for the stamps I'm stamping. But that's just going to be what it is, I guess. We'll see what I can manage. Grand, so there's another multiple. So I'm going to carry on till I've filled these up, and then I'll come back and we will do some clusters. Back in a sec. I haven't cut them all out yet, but I've got plenty to be going on with. I just thought I'd show you, yeah, none of my circle punches were the right size, and so I've leapt back on to say there's no special trick, I'm afraid, to cutting in circles. It's just a question of a steady hand, I guess, and doing it a lot obviously creates more skill at a thing, as practice makes perfect. I'm afraid that's a truism. But also one of the things that I have learned, and I think I've probably mentioned it before when I'm cutting out botanicals, one thing I picked up along the way is move the image, move the paper, not the scissors. So I'm keeping the scissors in one place and just gradually closing the blades as I rotate the image. And I find that that is really kind of the most helpful thing I can say about cutting circles, is just to let that be the way it happens. And then there was one other... Oh, look, I've stamped that very close, but I think it's doable. There we go, both usable. Trim, trim. Love this little one. Just a really simple little, that corner sticking out. La, la, la. So yeah, once more, round it goes. So you can choose to leave a little rim around the outside so that you can see what you're following, or you can choose to cut right on that line, but really just rotating the image as opposed to trying to move the scissors. She said moving the scissors is the simplest task. And then the other little thing I just wanted to pop into your heads is another little trick. I can't remember where I first read about this, but somebody mentioned getting barber's scissors. So the ones that are just for thinning the hair. I think I just Googled... I googled hairdresser's scissors or barber's scissors or scissors for thinning, and this is just a cheap pair that I got online, so they're not particularly sharp, but if you use them to cut around the edge of a stamp label, I'm just going to free that up so that I can get down that side, you get the perforations of the stamp as you cut them, which I think is quite a neat trick. I wish I could remember who I was watching. A crafter, or no, I don't think even watching. I think it was probably a post on Instagram, maybe, so that they just have that little extra bit of detail. And if it's Tim Holtz has a whole plate of stamps, or if it's some of the stamps off my sets, it's just a lovely way. If you're not stamping direct to the project, if you're doing a cutout stamp to stick on, to get that extra bit of detailing. And of course, if I ink around the edges of that, I'll show up that texture even more. Right, I think I'm going to call a halt there. I can always cut out some more as I go if I need them, and yeah, get back the pieces of paper that I'm going to cluster onto. So let's push you back a little bit. Let's get you out of the way over there, and I've lost the bits of paper. Oh, there they are. There they are. So these are my starting points. They're leftovers from the tag quartet we did a couple of weeks back. I'll link to that in the description below. So some of these I had planned as a quartet, because these four are all the same size. But I think now they're just going to be extra panels. Some of these are going to be horizontal. Just because the writing's that way doesn't mean that has to be that way. Some of these are definitely vertical because I like the plants the right way up. And then there's a couple of yeah, sort of random sized ones. I do think I want to start in a similar way as when I made those tags, which is to just give these the teensiest wash of gesso. Although, well, here's the thing. So you can probably see these have got a yellowy green tone. These are very much turquoise, and I like the contrast of that because that really pops. But another thing that these Mattints are good for, I'll do it on the back of here so that we don't, because I don't know at the moment whether I want to do it on these, is because they are completely transparent. If a piece of paper or a design paper is not quite the tone you want, and you want to kind of shift it to match something else you're doing, adding a little coat of the Mattint can just shift it so that you've then got something that matches whatever else it is you might be doing. Okay, I've now made that paper wet, so it's just going to curl up. But if I put some liquid on the other side of it, as in some gesso, that should sort me out. I'm just going to clean that brush though, because it's still got Dragonfly Mattint on it. But yeah, so it's just something to bear in mind if you want to shift the colour tone of a piece of paper and you don't lose any of the detail, because as I say, they are completely translucent, and also because they are a seal and a tint and a glaze, it kind of seals the paper in the same way that gesso does. So I just want to scub these papers up a little bit and give me that distressed sort of a look. So it's not going to be much, it's just a little scraping. I think I did this with a palette knife when I did the tags, so that is different, and you can do the same thing, because again that'll give you a slightly different texture to your gesso. That was quite a lot, so if you've done too much, knock it back. But you can see this is also altering the tone of the tags a little bit. Just that gesso over the top gives me a slightly different kind of look for them. Maybe it should be some scraping for some and brushwork on others, or a combination of the two. So those yellow flowers are beautiful, but for me they're a little bit too full on yellow. I did embark on the yellow the other day, and I do have the sellotape strips around, so yellow might well be a thing today as well. I mean, it's going to be, because it's within the tones of the paper, but I don't need my yellows quite so full on. That's just me. You might be really happy to have full on yellow, especially this time of year. I mean, this time of year is the one time when yeah, I do concede that a bright yellow daffodil or tulip or crocus flower cheering up a winter garden is a thing of joy. So yeah, I'm putting it on, I'm knocking it back, and as you can see, it's a subtle difference to just give those papers even more of a whitewashed look. They have gorgeous vintage detail in them, don't get me wrong, I love them, and I was delighted to see them come back from the vault, even if it's only temporary, which we have it on Tim's assurance that it is, because they're not going to be able to get hold of the paper for very long, for a very big edition. So again, on this one, just those, it's black, you see, that strong black vintage look, not really my bag, which is why I've stamped all of those in watering can grey as opposed to in a black ink, because I like the faded sort of look. So that black lettering was just a bit too prominent for me. Yeah, almost there. So some of these have got more than others, and that's all good. Just varying the tone and the changes. I've put a bit of water in that gesso. That's a lot of water in that gesso, which you want to be a little bit careful about when you're applying to paper. You don't want to get these papers too wet, just because they will sort of curl up like that one is. If you keep the gesso fairly dry, then you've probably got a better chance. And I'm going to put some scrapings on a couple of these as well, because I like the texture of the scrapings. So let's just give you a bit of scraping just to add to the detail, because there's not very much imagery going on that one. So it just gives me that sort of variation in detail. And you can see I'm going horizontally, vertically, so there's too much, knock it back. If it's gone over the top while it's still wet, you've got a chance to change things. This one didn't get very much gesso, so it could have a little scraping of texture. That's quite pleasing to the eye. And so my aim layering up these clusters is going to be really not to think too hard. In fact, I might go so far as to not be talking to you and just play some background music, because in terms of, you know, adding things, you don't need to hear every last sort of this one, no, that one, no, the other one. I'm thinking of starting though, I'll say this before I dive in, with some book page fragments. So I'm just ripping these out of, there's some things in here, look, I didn't even know they were there. I thought this was a tearing up book, but that's fine, I can tear and journal. So I'm having a couple of these pages, yeah, just so I can have some of that to layer into whatever else is going on. Are you seriously not 2 pages? You are 2 pages. I'll pull you apart in a minute. That's the effect of having the glue in the other parts of the book. I'll have another one of those. Just because I've always liked the effect of just a fragment of book page within the layering. And those will be torn and ripped. And all the other thought is just to share with you before we start, because once I get to it, is I've got various sizes of paper dolls out. So the paper dolls have come in multiple packs over the years, and some are minis, true minis. In fact, I don't think I've got any of the really true minis out, because I have those in a separate tin. So for the most part, I keep paper dolls in a separate tin, and those are the general sort of ones that are around. But you can see even there's smaller and larger ones. In fact, let's grab a few more of these out, because I do like the look of some of those. But just to think about how different it is on a piece of paper, the scale of things really matters. So if I put the teeny tiny guy, then I've got, well, he's not teeny tiny, the teeny tinies, that's what I was getting out to show you. The teeny tinies are all in a separate box here, and they are perfect for ATCs. They're perfect for those little envelopes I sometimes work on. Yeah, look, see, there he is. So if I were to use teeny tiny, in fact, I think there's one that's even smaller than that, you get a sense of scale and space. If you use a medium-sized one, you're getting something with a bit more presence and a sense of depth still. Or you can have something that is considerably larger, and then it becomes really all about him, as opposed to the rest of the panel. He doesn't want to go in that. He wants to be in the big box. He's not teeny enough to go in there. You are teeny enough to go in there. So yeah, just keeping an eye out. And I've found that over the years, some of them, I've used her in the larger size over and over again, but the smaller ones are still here. And I noticed that in various packs, even though these two look the same size, they're not quite. She's a little bit smaller here than she is there. And also the colour tones have varied over the years. I'll show you on the larger two. So there's a really warm sepia to her here, and she's a much cooler tone here, the grey tone of that vintage photo. So it's just, if you've got multiple packs, and yes, I'm afraid I have bought a lot of paper dolls over the years, because as I say, you get multiple sizes sometimes in a pack. Not always, so the groups all came in a large size. There was a set called the minis, which were obviously all little. And sometimes they're all the same size and just lots of different dolls. Sometimes you get the same doll multiple times. But do watch out, because if you've got multiples, it's worth checking between a sepia tone and a more grey blue tone. Have we got, yeah, see, he is different in, well, he's almost the same, but that's a little more sepia. And some of them have a really strong photographic print, so a much darker black on her dress, for instance, as opposed to the sort of softer sepia black of his suit. And all of those things make a difference when you're layering them up. I think I've talked about that in detail probably with the Photobooth photos in the past, and how I like to find ones that tone in with each other. But it's also worth keeping an eye out. So you could go back in the minis. Are you mini? Actually, maybe you're not mini enough to go in the minis. You probably, yeah. Well, we'll have one in each, because I might go looking for you in either place, I think, really. But as I say, I've used the large size of her multiple times, and that's why I end up buying multiple packets, because I have favourites and she's one of them. So, yeah, I think I'm probably going to shut up and just layer things up now. I've got some ephemera that I bought from one of the evil websites online. So just cheap sort of ticket ephemera. I've got these delicious Tim Holtz stamps. I've got various ideology labels. But I'll come back. I'm almost bound to want to chat about things. I've got some mop-up papers that I'm thinking I could do die cut something out of that. Maybe some little birds. I have got a couple of brown little birds sitting around, so they were also offcuts from the paper. And they might be a thing on a couple of these. We'll see. Or I might cut them out of that, or I might just do some circle punching out of those and see what I've got. Even though my circle punches weren't the right size for what I wanted here, they might be for this. Right, I'm going to have a play, and I think I'll put on a little bit of bird song while I do that, and you, yeah, craft along as I go.
Okay, so I've got my sort of first basic architectural structures going on. Those Tim Holtz paper strips are great for just giving you some verticals, some strong horizontals. I'm quite enjoying, I think, these mop-up panels on each of them, because it's just giving them a bit of inky delight. Quite like those splotches showing more than that splotch. I think there might be a better splotch to show here. Yep, definitely. So I'll just check that I've got the best splotches on view. I like the layers of splotch in there. And yeah, so I'm going to do a bit of gluing down of these, because I think I'll be able to layer things underneath that I want. Oh look, there's a better splotch there. Really interesting, just turning a splotch around can make a world of difference. I'm enjoying things sort of sticking off the edges. I think that's going to be a thing for sure. I'm not planning to trim these down. Oh, has he got two? Look, he's secretly stolen two of those, which means we could have a slightly longer one going on. So I trimmed one of them a bit too short, so we might just change that up and let her have this one instead, and those
Those will work on an ATC. Oh dear, I've been off camera this whole time, my apologies. Just too far down. But yeah, so I'm going to do a little bit of gluing down, and as you can see, I've started to position labels, but I think also I'm going to want to do a bit of tucking of the number strips, that kind of thing, adding some of those because they're always fun to work with. And yeah, some of it I'm going to attach with strips of tape. So I think the photos almost certainly will go on with the faded sellotape. I'll see what I think about maybe some bits of this. I started to have a look at these, as you saw, and they might be something on the paper doll ones. It might be something like that that's going to go down with the sellotape strip. But I just thought it would be nice for you to see those early stages of just kind of going, oh, it's this, it's this, it's this, maybe that. And yeah, I'll do a bit of gluing and come back for some added touches later on. I'm back, and as you can see, things have progressed. I've got sellotape taping down the photos, and for the most part that's all I've got taping them down at the moment, so that I can still slide other things underneath if I want to. So as you can see, he's still very willing to flap upwards. I've done a little bit of gluing of some of these labels, but I'm sort of on those final stages. I have been adding some number snippets as well as my own created ephemera, but I think you can see why now I love this kind of creating with the stamps, whether it's Tim Holtz's stamps or my own, that I can have this completely coordinated look, but they're not all completely the same color. It means I get that harmony that I love of the repetition and variation. I get that ease of being able to pick something up and know that it's going to fit with everything else that's going on without me having to worry too much about it. I think I do want you close to the butterfly. So where they are square photos, rectangular photos, I have used the sellotape strips on those. Where it's a paper doll, so you can't really put a sellotape strip down the side of a paper doll. I think that would look a bit weird. They've each got a little bit of the butterfly ephemera, and that's where I've used the sellotape strip so that they get that little pop of yellow. It really is it's a springtime palette, isn't it? Look at that. It's again, it's a bit more colour than I might consider using on a daily basis, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying that yellowness. Obviously I would always happily use the duck egg or teal. Salvage patina and speckled egg are probably my most used, well, next to pumice stone grey, some of my most used distressing colours, so that's not unexpected. So the other reason I've leapt back on is I'm about to do my favourite thing with this particular little bit of stamped ephemera, or from one of my stamp sets, is to cut out the centre of it. So it works perfectly well as a piece like that, and particularly if you're stamping direct onto a project. You've seen me use this, I'm pretty sure, stamped direct to a background, and you get just this lovely hoop. But you can achieve the same thing even with a cut out and stamped version. So I tend to stick the scissors through the middle and then do a couple of snips coming out to the center, which just gives me a little bit more flexibility and malleability to cut out that central hole. It's the same thing I would do with a botanical. If there's a space between some leaves, is just to dive in with the scissors, create a first little incision. It's like precision surgery. And I'm just to clean up that or disguise that white freshly cut edge around the middle. I'm just going to sponge on a bit of frayed burlap, because frayed burlap seems to be the colour that is within these papers, and then you can pop it down and not cover up everything that's going on. Not quite sure where that's going yet. I quite like it there. That's quite nice. And maybe he gets another little one somewhere up there. Just a little yeah, I think that's quite good. So we might make a decision. As I say, I'm trying today not to second guess myself, not to go, oh, maybe there's a better option, but just to let instinct rule the day. Oh, look, he's not even glued down yet. Ah, that's because the other thing I wanted to do with these paper dolls is give them a bit of a grounding, which we've done with strips of paper. That's what we did on the tags. You could do with just a bit of pen work to create shadows, or a bit of paint. But I think what I'm going to give these guys is a little bit of washi tape or design tape. This is the Tim Holtz design tape, but any washi tape will do. And what I tend to do is tear lengthwise down the tape so that I get slightly jagged edges. Now, is this where I want you to stand? Well, I do, because I want you hooking your arm over that panel there. Maybe a little further over. That's quite good. That's quite jaunty, isn't it? And I get a bit more butterfly that way. So I've got two flat edges that I'm going to kind of line up. One is going to go under his feet, and the other one just to give him a slightly more solid base, just off center, not matching quite. And that's generally how I create a little bit of grounding, or one of many ways I create a little bit of grounding. But this design tape seems to tone in with all of what's going on quite well, so I think I might stick with it for these two other chaps. So there it is again, just lengthwise down there. One piece that will go under his feet, lift him up, he's not glued down, and the other bit just off. So it's not just a solid strip of tape. That's what I prefer, is not to have a solid bit of tape. His butterflies are sort of quite hidden behind, but I don't really mind that. It's more of a memory of a butterfly than a, oh look everybody, here's a butterfly. Just seeing these birds here and wondering if they do have a part to play on a couple of these. They work best obviously on the ones where I've got the little photos, because there's not so, that's quite funny, sitting on his head. No, I'm not sure about that. Maybe down here, maybe so he's silhouetted against that beautiful label. Don't know, I'll let them sit there for a minute and have a think about that. What else still needs gluing down? Oh, you haven't got your floor yet. Oh look, it's gone brown rather than green, but that's fine. His will be slightly different. Let's get that in there so that he has somewhere to stand with his dog. So it's just a slight grounding of what's going on. I think we'll move you slightly to that side. Great. I think I want a few more of these around. People who've been signing documents. Maybe up there. Yeah, that's quite nice. Is that glued down yet? Yeah, I've forgotten what I've glued and what I haven't now. So let's see. Oh, well. Oh, butterfingers, and now I've dripped glue somewhere. That's maybe you saying, no, I want that one. Okay, you shall have it. Or maybe down the side here. That's quite cool. Echoing the sellotape a little further up would be better. So now I've got a nice thing kind of going diagonally down there. That was really meant for somebody up here, wasn't it? Let's see what else we've got. There's all these people doing business and stamping invoices and dating forms, and he's got a telephone number. Let's see if we can grab that one. Here's your telephone number, sir. How's that for you? Yeah, that's quite nice up there, look. So maybe I'll tuck that behind there. The other thing I do when I'm gluing down labels is I tend to glue in the center of the label and leave around the edges so that I can, as I'm doing here, add in little extra bits and just sort of tuck them underneath. Really? You a 1907 model? I don't think you were born in 1907, were you? Well, I suppose you could have been, looking at your clothing. I quite like the dark tone of that nice sepia glow. So again, maybe we can tuck it under, just, rather than going over the top. So some under, some over is the general rule of thumb. I think it might be time to glue down the paper dolls. I think I might be done with tucking things underneath them. Who else needs gluing? You need gluing. So as always, just a little bit down the middle, leaving the edges just in case I want to touch. I haven't glued, see there's a butterfly as well, still flapping. So if I did want to add something underneath, I'm still going to have that ability. I love how jaunty he is, he's great. Whereas this chap is just so dapper and elegant. I adore him with his hat. And yeah, I would love to ask him what it is he's all dressed up for, looking so natty. There he goes. He's got a little thing to lean on as well. He's sort of leaning on the upright, leaning on the lamppost, corner of the street. Till a certain little lady walks by. Oh me, oh my. That's a song, just in case anybody thinks I've gone nuts. Right, there's a little bit more. So you can see that little bit of inking around the edge of that texture on the postage stamp just gives me a little bit extra. The shopping street here and those cars in the background, it's just a treat of a glimpse back in time, almost like time travel. I sometimes think, looking at old photos and trying to imagine the lives of the people in them, what they're thinking, particularly when you look at very early photos. So the photo is, you know, before having your photograph taken was a completely ordinary thing. That moment of, I'm in my very best clothes, I've dressed up especially for this, I'm here, and it's a really significant kind of important moment compared to our constant snapping these days that we never look at ever again because they're just on the phone somewhere. That's another address or telephone number. What else? This woman looks as though she's all dressed up for something wonderful as well. Look at that corsage. That's quite something. Let's have a look at these. Maybe, oh well, if you're getting married, maybe you would like $1,000 in cash. That would be nice, wouldn't it? As a wedding present. I don't know why I've decided that just because she's got a corsage on she's getting married, but there we are. She must have said that, not me. That's quite nice. Okay. Do I want these birds? It's just, there's just something sort of slightly deliciously quirky about having the bird on just a couple of them. I want to edge it with a bit of scorched timber though, probably, to give that bird a bit more definition around the edges, just so he'll pop. And scorched timber is really a great colour for doing that. It's black without being black, the darkest possible brown you could come up with, and that just gives him a bit more, hello, I'm here. I don't know, I'm still in two minds. I'll take a look at them both in place. But I think what I do want on each of these is some sort of little number brad, probably. A nice little metal accent is a good thing. Has everybody got enough labelling going on? I don't know that I want you flapping up and down quite that much, so I might just, same for you. Little touch of glue to just hold you slightly in place. I quite like the birds because some people have got butterflies, so why shouldn't some people have birds? It is spring, after all. The thing is, do I want him properly related to the photo like that, or do I want him just as an element? Now that I've put $1,000 in cash there, that's less good. He could, Well, he's quite good sitting there, isn't he? So do you... I could give him some washi tape to stand on, like I've given the paper dolls. Could give him that. I don't hate it. I'm going to let it sit there for a little bit longer while I look at a few more labels. And yeah, maximum, she's only allowed to go around at 3,600 RPM. It's fairly random kind of affairs, some of these snippet labels, but sometimes, as with the $1,000 in cash because she's getting married, they have a reason to exist. I think he could do with one down here. She could do with another. There's something a bit bare about that, which is why the bird is quite good on there, I think. Maybe it's number brad time and then I'll know. Oh, you could do with another. Maybe a slightly paler one. Let's have a look what we've got. Communicate with him at the PO box. Oh, maybe he's a mathematician. Look at that. He's certainly got a lot of numbers on his. So there you go. He's a mathematician or an accountant, or he's learning accountancy. He looks quite young and fresh and sort of hopeful about the world. So I don't think he's a jaded old accountant. He's making his way in the world, battling against a world that's against him. But he knows that numbers are a thing that are going to make a difference. Yeah, I think a bit of spatter is probably called for. I think I'm going to keep all of these blue-green labels together for now in this little tin. Maybe I need to stick one on the top of the tin and that'll remind me what's in there. I think we're done with this butterfly ephemera. I think we've got enough of that. Oh, but what might be nice is maybe some of these postage stamps or tickets. That's the other thing I was thinking of using. It's probably a bit late to slide any under anything now. Let's have a look. So this is a tear out ticket book. Ooh, that is quite good, isn't it? Just as an extra bit of ephemera tucked under the photo, tucked by the photo. So I'm going to regret that 1,000 in cash because I think I'm just going to stick over the top of it now. And then we could join that together with a number strip that maybe goes either horizontally or vertically. Let me just see before I decide on the right one, to see if it works as a thing. It's maybe something like that. Let's see what other tickets we've got in here. I think I'm going to want to stick to brownish coloured ones because there's there's a lot of colour going on already on these for me. Nice brown tickets, and the great thing with this is because you're tearing them out, these have got those perforations on, ready-made perforations. So I'm going to regret having stuck down the paper dolls now, aren't I? So I think it might be birds out to live another day, tickets in, maybe it's half tickets. Ooh, or coming from the top with a little paper clip, maybe a half ticket paper clipped to the top there. That's good. Let's see if that's it here as well. Half ticket just tucked on there. Yes, now you're talking. Okay, so where does your half ticket go if you've got one? Half ticket number 5 over here. Yep. Half ticket for you, young man. Where's it go? Not under there. Has to go on the edge of the page. Does it? Is that good? Yes, 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 yes. Half ticket for this chap. Half ticket for you, young man. Nearly there. 2 more of you need a ticket. Do you like that one? Do you like that one? Just flicking through for another. Oh, look. There we go. Ritz Theatre. How do you fancy a trip to the Ritz Theatre? Or the Thornton. Let's have that one. So repetition and variation, that old chestnut. It is the way my brain works, isn't it? It must be clear to you by now that these kind of moments of those tickets just appearing on each one but in a slightly different position, those labels appearing on each one but in a slightly different position, vintage photos but slightly larger, slightly smaller, paper doll or rectangular, it all just adds up. I wonder if I've got enough little metal paper clips to clip these tickets on. That would be a bit cute. It would be sort of pretending that the other half of the ticket is folded over behind, which might be quite a nice effect. This one here. So you don't need to watch me doing that. I will go in search of paper clips, finish gluing these down, and be back. You know what's going to happen, don't you? It's going to be a bit of spatter. It's inevitable. I'm just wondering whether she's not maybe right there. Maybe that needs to be that side. There's something a bit bare about her still, so I might need to tackle that. Hers is right up there, I think. But it was better when it was that one. Maybe it's just about positioning this so that it makes sense to me. Ooh, I like it coming from the top. That's better. Grand. I'll glue these down. I'll maybe see if I've got enough paper clips, and I might add a metal number brad to each of these and join you for some final spatter thoughts. Just before the final spattering, I've given each of them some words, which I'll read to you in just a second. And I've been doing one of my sort of stitched doodles around the edges, or doodled stitches, which, yeah, is as simple as a little fine liner in black just to go around the edge. One thing to just think about as you're doing it, though, is what have I stitched under and what have I stuck on? What have I stuck on after stitching? Actually, that's what I think. What have I stuck on after stitching? And the main decision I took was that all those tickets have been put on after the stitching, so obviously the line goes behind there rather than over the top. And for the most part, these green rectangular labels, I've sort of decided the same thing about, that they were there after I did the stitching, that I've stuck them on later. Little bit of thread coming loose, little bit of thread coming loose, maybe a little bit of thread coming loose, and that's my stitching around the edge, because sewing machines break when I sit down at them. I've on more than one occasion, and somebody's kindly offered to try and help me with sewing, I have broken their precious sewing machines. I don't know how it happens. It just is one of those things. So this brush is already quite wet, so hopefully that's quite a good consistency for just a little bit of spatter across these, which again is just a way of bringing things together. And all those shiny vintage photos, because of the paper they're printed on, or the printing processes, they are glossy, which means that I've got a bit of time to get in there and wipe away anything that's too much across somebody's face. I don't mind having it across the clothing. I think that's quite fun, but I prefer not to cover up their faces, because there are so many stories and ideas when you can look them in the eye. So yeah, I'm just getting some spatter across some of those places where there's less going on, although there's not many places here where there's less going on. These are full-on clusters, but they'll be great for adding to a journal page, or I might create a whole little album with them. I think there's something rather nice about some of the stories that are going on here. Right, so as I said, don't like that in his hair, so let's just get rid of that around his jawline as well. You, poor chap, got loads all over you. I'm trying to decide whether I mind the ones on the hat. I'm going to mostly get rid of the ones on the hat. Definitely getting rid of the ones on the face. There we go. You, I think, pretty much escaped. You also escaped. You didn't. You got very painty. You also got one just above your eyebrow. It looks like you've got a pierced eyebrow. And yeah, lucky is a state of mind, but not when it comes to white paint. You've got lots all over you. That's better. And yeah, a little wipe for you as well. If you're too slow, you can usually scratch it away with a fingernail as well. But yeah, a little bit of moisture will do the trick. So there they are. I will dive in for close-ups so that you can see what's what on there. My guess is this has run long again, but there you go. A few more minutes of fun for you, just building up little collage clusters. Because they're on the Tim Holtz papers, you've still got beautiful backs to all of these. So if you were to kind of make an accordion album is the other option with this, you could make something really quite nice that does that. But yeah, for now, I'm calling these done. Thank you so much for your company. As always, I will try to leave as much detail in the description down below of what we've been using today as I possibly can. And I'll link to any other videos I can remember that might be of interest or of use. And here they are, just with the hold on tight to your dreams number brad paperclip. Creativity takes courage. Be your beautiful self. It's all perspective. Today is a good day. Forever is composed of nows. Lucky is a state of mind. Practice kindness. My guess is the more you practice kindness, the luckier you might get. Thanks so much for watching all, and happy crafting.